A video game addict finds himself in a new world inside a mysterious game called Aelin, and begins his journey to uncover the secrets of the summoner class, overcoming challenges with no clues or guidance.
This story begins as our protagonist's favorite game shuts down all of its servers. With the game gone, the protagonist realizes that he will have to touch his unfind and find games in Beat. So, he gets to searching for a hardcore game on the internet, and comes across a game that claims to have no ending. With the protagonist's interest already at its peak, he starts feeling like he's up for a real challenge. So, he chooses the hardest difficulty, Hell Mode, and also the hardest class summoner. The second he hits play, the computer literally absorbs him inside the game world, and basically reincarnates him as a newborn youngling. His father is happy to learn that he's gotten a son and names him Aelin. Aelin receives a lot of love from both his parents, so he feels glad even though he's born into a poor farmer's family. Over the next couple of months, he learns that he is currently in a rural village where most of the people cultivate land and pay taxes to their feudal lord. Aelin's dad, Rudin, is a farmer and his mother, Teresia, is a housewife. Since both Rudin and Teresa are in their early 20s, Aelin believes that he will soon have younger siblings and can't wait to become part of a bigger family. One night, Aelin recalls the basic Isekai trope and uses the command stat window open. It works, but instead of a holographic system menu popping up, a grimoire appears, causing Aelin to freak out. He quickly uses the command stat window close before his parents come in and pretends as if he is asleep. After making sure the parameters are clear, he summons the grimoire again and goes through its pages. The first page has Aelin's stats written down, and as expected, all of them are at the lowest rank. The next page entails the details of Aelin's summoning skill, and reading it, Aelin learns that he apparently is already able to summon H-ranked insects and beasts. The book suddenly glows and flips itself to a new page. It's a message from Elmia, the creator of this world, who explains that the summoner class is still under beta testing, so he apologizes if Aelin faces any difficulties because of his chosen class. Aelin doesn't care about the message and proceeds to summon an insect, but no matter how many times he tries the incantation, the summoning spell just doesn't work. Aelin thinks hard for a solution and realizes that perhaps he needs to create the relevant beast first. So, he creates an H-ranked insect card. But as he's about to summon the beast, he notices that his mom, Teresia, is coming. So, he pretends to be asleep again, but ends up actually falling asleep. The next early morning, Rudin goes outside and starts chopping wood while Teresia gets to cleaning their clothes. As both parents are busy outside, Aelin uses this opportunity and uses the insect summoning spell, causing his room to be filled with luminescent balls of spirits. Fortunately for Aelin, his mom isn't paying attention, so he quickly gets on with it, and as the spirit balls are condensed once again, they manifest into a cat-sized grasshopper. Seeing its angry expression, Aelin wonders if this creature will even listen to his commands. He decides to still give it a try, and with his half-broken youngling voice, orders the bug to fly to his hands. Bug, however, turns the other way, making Aelin wonder if it's dumb or something. He suspects that the reason the grasshopper isn't listening to his commands must be because he hasn't met the necessary conditions yet. So, he checks the grimoire and looks at the grasshopper's stat menu. He picks the name Dina for the green bug and then looks at its stats when he learns that this tiny little insect actually gives him +1 endurance and agility. This fact causes Aelin to blurt out the word awesome on impulse, prompting his mom to enter the room. Seeing the ugly insect grosses Teresia out, and she instinctively stomps on it. Despite this accident, Aelin continues to test his summoning skill whenever he gets the opportunity, and one day decides to summon a beast. A white rat comes out, and as expected of an H-rank beast, it's also dumb as bricks, just like Dina. Still, Aelin gives it the name Mousy, and then looks at its stats when he learns that it actually has an ability called Scurry. Aelin manages to activate this ability, causing Mousy to scurry around him. This makes him wonder what kind of strong monsters he can potentially summon and control. For now, he can only create a total of 10 summoning cards. So, he creates 10 Mousy cards, and as a result, his attack stats get a plus boost because of Mousy's buff. With this boost, he can now easily chop wood, even though he's only a year old. But he still doesn't think it's enough. This makes him wonder how much easier the game would have been if he had chosen any other difficulty. So he regrets picking Hell Mode. Rodin comes back home with myoglobin all over him, making Teresia worry if he's hurt. But Rodin claims to be fine, explaining that he went to a boar hunt earlier, which caused this. Rodin asks Aelin if he'd like to see the boar they've hunted down, and as Aelin excitedly nods, Rodin carries him to the place where the beast is being carved up. On their way there, they see a flock of birds called albihirons, who are no less than dinosaurs in size, so Rodin refers to them as monsters. Rodin tells Aelin a fun fact, saying that he named him after those birds, hoping that he too would live a free life and fly around wherever he wants to in this world. He sleeps off on Rodin's hands, as Rodin walks to take him to his creature. When they eventually arrive at the location, Rodin wakes him up and shows him the Great Boar. When he touches the Great Boar, the first thing he thinks about is the fact that the monster is so great, and he doubts that he can successfully defeat that kind of monster. One of their neighbors, Cherta, walks up to Rodin and hypes him up as the star of the day. The other villagers there hail Rodin because that kind of victory isn't one that anyone can achieve. So Rodin had done so well. Cherta notices Aelin and comments on Aelin's black hair and eyes. Aelin greets him in return, and he is shocked that Aelin can talk at the age of 1. He comments that Aelin is growing so much better than Krita, his daughter, who is about the same age as Aelin. Aelin asks about the Great Boar and how strong it is. So Cherta explains that the Great Boar is a C-ranked monster. It isn't some Twartleman Tokilit. This only gives Aelin enough opportunity to gauge himself and think of how he could be better. 10 months pass by as fast as possible, and Aelin is now 1 year and 10 months old. He keeps trying his hand at his skills, and he realizes that he can now summon G-ranked monsters. He can also successfully fuse together H and G rank monsters. He has cards of both H and G ranked monsters and checks his cards, then tries to use his newly acquired power, but he gets a notification that he has low MP. He assumes the problem is hunger, so he goes to eat his meal. He rushes a huge plate of food, and his parents look visibly concerned. Turns to his room immediately to check his powers. When he tries to fuse the cards again, it doesn't work. Again, he has low MP. He considers summoning another card, but again, he has low MP. Eventually, he gives up on it. 3 years pass by, and Aelin is now 3 years old. He has gained enough strength and MP, and he can now fuse together his 2 cards. He fuses a G rank and an H rank card and gets a GH card. Then he summons a pet from the card. He successfully summons a bird G, and he is excited. The bird, which he names Chappie, is level 2 in agility and strength. Also has the skill voice mimic, which makes Aelin assume that he could validly use it against enemies when fighting. Aelin goes outside with his new pets. The first one is Hoppy, a tiny bird that hops. He asks Hoppy to hop, and he hopes to use the hopping to distract his opponents. The next is Molly, a pet that has the ability to dig. He asks Molly to dig, and Molly digs a hole, which he hopes to use to set a trap for his enemies. As he plans his imaginary life, he mistakenly falls into the hole that Molly had dug. This brings him back to the reality that he is just a child and he can't even fight anyone. It is 3 o'clock p.m. and this brings him more worries. He hears the voice that worries him and knows that she is around. The voice belongs to Krita, Cherta's daughter, as she is there to play with him as usual. They play night games every day, so they both set out their swords to fight. Kita is faster than he can imagine, and she has so much strength that she overpowers the reincarnated protagonist. After hitting him as much as she could with no defense on his side, he falls down flat and loses the game. His parents arrive, and Teresa's stomach is now as big as he had earlier predicted, which means a sibling is coming. Teresa and RHDN ask Krita to return home, and they also go home. During dinner, Aelin suggests to his father that he would like to follow him to the farm to help with the harvest since his mother is pregnant and won't be able to help. Rodin refuses his offer, and Teresia also insists that she is strong enough to continue. They appreciate the fact that he has been helping with the house chores, but he is still a kid, and a 3-year-old boy shouldn't be on the farm. To him, he already has the strength of an adult and can take the burden off them. However, he understands that they wouldn't want him to do that, because no parents would want to subject their child to such a thing. Teresia tells him to continue playing with Krata. They comment about his night games with Krata and how good they are. Rodin informs him that with their present skills, they can't wait to see what their abilities will be during the appraisal ceremony. Aelin doesn't know about it, so Rodin explains that when they clock the age of 5, a ceremony will be held where they will learn what skills they have. If they get good skills, they will be able to break out of serfdom. Rodin also comments that he has been seeing Aelin throwing stones at the tree outside and inquires why. Aelin lies that it is because they told him there are monsters outside, so he wants to throw stones at them to protect his mother. The real reason he has been throwing stones is to confirm if he has any other skills besides summoning. The following day, he practices his summoning. He has gotten to the stage where he can summon all day without getting tired. He looks at his Andankatu, but gets distracted when Krita arrives. They go for their usual duel, and as usual, he loses and falls. Rodin arrives and Teresia comes to greet him. Unfortunately, Dina hops onto her and she falls in fear. She recovers after the scare jump, but suddenly gets severe stomach aches. Her water has broken and the baby is on its way. Rodin commits Krita to get her mother Matilda, while he takes Teresa to the bed, trying to help in his own way. Aelin helps to boil water. He goes to inform them that the water is hot. And coincidentally, Matilda arrives too. She sends the men out of the room and helps Teresia with the delivery. The men are almost asleep outside the house when Teresa gives birth, and they call them in excitedly. Aelin now has a brother, and Rodin names the child Mash, a name that Teresa questions, asking if it isn't also the name of a monster. Rodin reacts with a smile that shows her she is right. Seeing the excitement on everyone's face, Aelin wonders why he was reincarnated, removing the fact that he is a game addict who just wanted to level up into a new game. He was nothing but a work addict who was lonely and lived a poor life in his previous world. There is nothing for him to miss in that life, and if he is being fair, he loves the idea of his new family. For now, all he wants to do is get his family out of serfdom. Teresia calls him to greet the baby. He goes to greet the child, who bursts into tears. He is terrified by this, and they jokingly tell him that kids are just like that. Aelin is undoubtedly enjoying his new life. However, fingers crossed to see his growth. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss new episode every week.
After that, years pass and the child reaches the age of 5, asking his father how the appraisal ritual works. His father explains that during the ritual, if they discover he possesses a talent, he will be able to leave the status of serf. However, he must be very patient, because since the exploitation of these lands began, countless children have been born, and now most of them are 5 years old like him. As they move forward, they meet Kurena and her father, and everyone goes together to the commoner's city. Kurena was extremely excited, hoping to receive the swordsman talent to become a knight. Upon arriving at the church, Aelin notices there are many boys, some of whom look very clean and are dressed better than them. He wonders if these are the commoners. While doing so, he notices a group of people looking at him and mentioning his black hair, which is very rare among serfs. Shortly after, officials welcome the future heroes of the lands and tell them that everyone will be given a chance, because even the nation's hero can be born a serf, like Saint Classis, who was born a commoner, or Swordmaster Dober, who was born a serf. Aelin is amazed and understands that he was of a low rank for the hero and weapon master classes. Now the conditions of the game are repeating in this place. They quickly enter the church, where Aelin notices 3 statues representing the gods of that world. In the center is Maya, the god of creation, the same one who sent him a message when he was 1 year old. Then the rituals begin, and the first one to step forward is the son of the town chief, named Paramus. Upon touching the crystal, the priest sees his statistics and announces that he is a merchant. His father gets excited because trade runs in his blood, while Aelin notices that every talent has a rank as well, taking the opportunity to write this down in his notebook, which he realizes only he can see. Then another boy passes, leaving in tears after discovering he has no talent. Among those appraised is Degora, the only one so far to have a skill at rank A, in addition to possessing the axe talent, and he was very excited. When the commoners finish the rituals, it is the serf's turn, and they pass through very quickly. Finally, it is the turn of Kurena, Gerda's daughter, who runs excitedly to touch the crystal. When she does, the entire place lights up, and the priests are surprised when they see the slate. Kurena asks them about the result without understanding anything, and the priest tells her she won the grand prize. Kurena's talent is Swordmaster. Everyone is surprised and excited to discover the existence of a swordmaster in their village. Gerda feels excited, although Kurena is not, as she had hoped to be a knight. For his part, Aelin expected something like this, otherwise nothing could explain her exaggerated strength. Finally, it is Aelin's turn. He steps forward thinking the moment has finally come for his parents to know he's a summoner, but when he touches the crystal, it goes dark. Aelin wonders what the hell is happening, but suddenly everything lights up with a power exceeding Kurena's. The glare pushes him back, but he gets up quickly to see the result with his father. However, the priest tells him that Aelin possesses no talent. Aelin remains in shock, wondering what is happening, and upon seeing the slate, he understands that his talent is completely unreadable. He begins to complain mentally to the god of creation, wondering how on earth he can say he's a summoner now. However, his father, Rodan, grabs him by the shoulders and calmly tells his son that it is time to go home. At night, when they are together, Rodan tells him they are still proud of him even if he doesn't have a talent. While Aelin thinks that despite their poverty and filth, he feels happy to be born into this family, even though everyone is actually younger than him mentally, he takes a look at his grimoire while everyone is asleep. He understands that he is the only one in hell mode in this world and that all his statistics are at rank E. He remembers that everyone appraised should be at level 1 like him, but their skill ranks were higher, which is proof of the potential for evolution based on leveling up. He wonders why he has everything so low. Although he understands that leveling up is 100 times harder, this also means it's 100 times worth the effort, so it isn't fair that his talent is unreadable. He complains once again to the god and decides he will do his best, but he also thinks about complaining to this god every night. Days go by, and as they walk together, Aelin asks his mother why his father looks so serious. She answers that he arrived late last night and has been in this state since then. After a while, arriving at Kurena's house, Kurena excitedly asks Aelin if he knew that being a sword master is stronger than being a knight. He pretends to be surprised even though he clearly knew. Matilda arrives with a strong drink gifted to them by the village chief. Rodan gets excited but soon returns to being serious. Observing him, Aelin wonders if his father is upset that Kurena is a sword master while he has no talent, but realizes his father isn't that kind of person. However, Gerda warns his friend Rodan that if he keeps that face, the drink will make him tired. Rodan replies not to spout nonsense, but Gerda comments that he seems unhappy for them, and Rodan angrily replies that he is happy, and it brings him great joy that Kurena possesses exceptional power. Gerda asks, then what the hell do you want to cut ties with him? Rodan answers that he doesn't want to do that, but Kurena has exceptional talent and could become a noble, and ideally she should not continue surrounding herself with starving, very poor people like them. Everyone present is surprised, and Gerda grabs him, telling him that changes nothing. For his part, Aelin feels it is time to intervene and asks Kurena if she needs to stop them. Kurena gets excited, but the mothers beat them to it and give the men a beating. Aelin is surprised and asks Matilda if his father and Gerda always fight. She reveals that they always have, but calms down a bit after the children were born. Before that, they fought over anything. Teresia reveals that them to four are friends since birth, and 10 years ago, when they heard about these lands, they all moved together to exploit them, so they joined forces to build their homes. While they talk, Gerda and Rodan remember the moment they built the houses together, and now that they are calmer, they toast to that. Days pass by, and one day, Gerda is told that a knight is looking for Kurena, who had just been fighting with Aelin. Now, in a scene change, while in the city, everyone talks about Kurena, but Dagora, the boy from before, asks Aelin what a talentless person is in this place. But Kurena intervenes to defend him, telling him that Aelin is a very strong person. Dagora tries to bite him, but Gerda grabs him before he causes a disaster. Meanwhile, the village chief announces that the knights have arrived, and Xenoph, the captain of the knights who is also a swordmaster, is introduced. Meeting with the village chief, Xenoph demands to see Gerda Kurena quickly. Her father is a bit nervous while Kurena is excited. For his part, Aelin thinks it would be sad if they took Kurena from the village now that she's a swordmaster. However, suddenly Gerda gets agitated and explains to Xenoph that his daughter has never held a real sword and is only 5 years old. Therefore, what he proposes is madness. But Xenoph replies that since she is a swordmaster, everything will be fine, and she must be put to the test. Otherwise, she will consider that they deceived the knights and the village chief, and tampering with the appraisal rituals is a sin punishable by death. Aelin feels things have gotten strange, while Xenoph orders the vice captain to get ready, as they must verify that the girl truly possesses that talent, and to do so, they must conduct a sword duel. Everyone in the village is surprised, while Gerda asks the captain to reconsider. However, Xenoph tells him that if Kurena does not fight, both of them will be executed. Meanwhile, a knight stands right next to Kurena, and when she sees the sword, she asks if she can take it. He confirms this, and Kurena excitedly tells her father she will fight, which almost causes him a heart attack. Now, in a scene change, she finds herself facing the vice captain of the knights who introduces himself as Librand. The fight begins, and without wasting time, Kurena attacks Librand, surprising everyone to see the little girl capable of handling such a sword. The problem is, when Librand gets serious, he pins her to the wall with a single kick. Gerda tries to intervene, but the knights stop him, as do Aelin and his father. Gerda feels frustrated because despite Kurena having great talent, she cannot compete with the true experience of the vice captain. However, Kurena gets up again and begins to release an aura from within. The vice captain gets nervous, and Kurena attacks him quickly. Now he can do nothing but defend himself. he realizes Corinna possesses an extra skill, and now with a single sword strike, the child breaks his sword. Zenov ends the fight, and Corinna thanks the vice captain with a big smile for the fight, commenting that he is very strong for an old man, even though the poor guy is only 24 years old. Zenov is surprised to see she's a real swordmaster and begins to pat the knights on the head. When Gerda picks up his daughter, she starts laughing. Zenov approaches them and tells him that he acknowledges Corinna's strength. He apologizes for his rudeness, although Gerda continues to show his displeasure. However, Zenov mentions that it is time to talk about his daughter's future and tells him that if he wants, his friends can accompany him. Now, at the village chief's house, Aelin sees that Gerda is still angry, which is very reasonable, but he wonders what is the axe boy doing in this place. His thoughts are interrupted by Zenov, who introduces himself again and tells them he is here by order of the lord of these lands, who wanted to verify that the rituals were not tampered with. He tells the village chief that the village usually bears the name of the chief, but since a sword master was born in this place, the lord of these lands now wishes to name the village Kureha. The village chief accepts without complaint, while Gerda's eyes nearly pop out of his head in amazement. For his part, Zenov reveals to them that 3 years ago, a sword master was born into a count family. However, this seems curious to Aelin, and while stealing fruits, he thinks that sword masters can only be born among serfs, commoners, and barons. Zenov continues telling them that the mentioned master entered the service of the royal family, but his work was not up to standard, and upon making him repeat the ritual, it turned out he was just a normal swordsman. Because of this, they discovered that many nobles had forged talent results. For this reason, the royal family has begun to mistrust ritual results, and for this reason, he apologizes once again to Gerda for putting his daughter to the test. Gerda accepts his apology, while Zenov reveals that she will enter the academy when she turns 12, to subsequently move to serve the royal family. Meanwhile, the boy with the axe asks if he can become a knight if he goes to the academy, which nearly causes its father a heart attack, and he rushes to apologize to Zenov. Zenov asks who this boy is, and his father introduces him, telling him he is an axe user and wants to become a knight. Upon hearing this, Zenov answers that he will send a teacher to the village and hopes the boy works hard to be able to enter the academy. Then Kureha tells Aelin that he should also study with her, but Dogora intervenes saying he has no talent, but Kureha orders him to be quiet because her friend Aelin is very strong. While he thinks, for his part, that a 5-year-old child is insulting him and his 5-year-old friend is defending him while he is actually 40 years old. Meanwhile, Zenov notices Aelin's black eyes and hair. Rodan tells him this is his son, while Gerda introduces his friend Rodan. Zenov stands up surprised and asks if he is the boar hunter. He apologizes for committing a folly, as he almost didn't greet the hero of that village properly. Rodan asks why he calls him that, and Zenov reveals that the lord of these lands is very pleased to receive the giant boar meat every winter that the village sends. He knows he risks a lot hunting them, so he congratulates him on his wonderful work and hopes he receives praise from his dear lord. Rodan accepts and shakes his hand, and after a while, he says goodbye to his friends. Upon heading home, he mentions that if a serf like him can earn the recognition of others, then, despite the harshness of life, they must continue living with their heads held high and with dignity. Aelin understands this. In the end, his difficulty lies in hell mode, and before returning home, he reveals to his father that he has a gift for his mother and Mosh. He asks if he shouldn't have done that, but his father starts laughing and reveals that he also did the same thing. What a pair of rascals! This concludes our episode today. To follow more episodes, please subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button to receive all new updates.
A young man is transported to another fantasy world, and despite the differences, he begins to notice strange and mysterious similarities between the two worlds. Determined to uncover the truth, he decides to explore this new world and become its strongest adventurer.
The story begins with a nobleman named Lizel wandering the corners of this kingdom. Although he does not know where he is, he walks through it searching for anything familiar. He arrives at the market, and as he strolls through it, everyone turns to look at him. He is truly eye-catching, for it is strange for a noble to appear here, yet he walks among them without fear. During his walk, he approaches a vendor and examines the coins in his hand, surprised because he has never seen such currency before. Above all, he knows nothing about this country, nor did he realize it was this large. Nevertheless, he continues his tour. On his way, he finds a group of armed mercenaries talking about a labyrinth, which puzzles him as he sees no signs of an imminent war here. He decides to continue on his path because he needs information, but first and foremost, he needs money. He arrives at a shop and enters, shocking the shopkeeper, who wonders what brought a nobleman like him to such a place. The shopkeeper welcomes him, and Liesel informs him that he has something to sell, producing a sword for the shopkeeper to appraise. While the appraisal is taking place, Liesel wanders around the shop and finds a map. He studies it to learn something about this country, but he does not recognize this land at all. He becomes certain that something is wrong with this place. We then return to the shopkeeper appraising the sword. He finds its ornamentation extremely beautiful and notes he has never seen such a design before. Liesel asks for its value, and the shopkeeper buys it for 200 gold pieces. Liesel asks to include the map along with the gold coins, and the shopkeeper agrees. The shopkeeper then offers him a choice of bags to put the gold coins in, and Liesel selected one. As the shopkeeper places the gold inside, Liesel finds the bag strange. The shopkeeper explains that these bags are enchanted with spatial magic, allowing him to put anything he wants inside. After that, Liesel goes out into the country and continues walking. He finds the climate mild and the city vibrant. It resembles the country he hails from, and this resemblance gives him a terrible feeling. However, he still needs more information and a companion to assist him, someone smart enough to understand his intentions. He doesn't know how he will achieve this, but he knows he must be cautious about revealing his identity. When he enters an alley, he senses someone behind him, named Gil. Liesel asks if he wants something, and Gil warns him, telling him there are bad men down that road and he shouldn't go that way. Liesel thanks him and tosses him a gold coin. Gil doesn't understand what he wants or who he is, so Liesel introduces himself and tells him he needs to speak with him urgently. Gil takes him to a tavern so they can talk comfortably. Liesel asks him to state his name and anything about himself, whether his work or his past. Gil explains that he is a solo adventurer ranked B, has no girlfriend and no intention of being in a relationship. Liesel reflects on his words about being an adventurer, realizing that the people he saw in the city were adventurers like him. Gil continues, stating that he is the only B-ranked adventurer in this country. He waits for Liesel to be surprised, but the opposite happens. He shows no reaction. Gil becomes suspicious of him. He's either a very great figure or a noble completely ignorant of everything. Regardless, Gil cannot read his expression at all. Liesel informs him that he has no profession and nothing to prove his social status, so he has no standing. Gil doesn't believe him at all, but he doesn't suspect him of ill intent.
Afterward, Liesel opens the map and asks him to explain the state of the country first. Gil answers that they are currently in Partida, the royal capital. He then points out the country of Marcati, which is the nation of trade, and introduces him to the country of Kavana, the nation of magical raw minerals. He continues, explaining that the nation of trade and the nation of magical minerals fought a war in the past, but the situation has calmed down recently. Liesel understands that the name of the trade nation reflects its nature, but he doesn't know if the nation of magical minerals implies a country rich in resources located next to a huge mine or not. He then asks Gil for his opinion on Partida. Gil describes the country as having good hotels, excellent food, and acceptable jobs, calling it a comfortable city for adventurers. Liesel thinks to himself for a moment that this country must attract many visitors, and perhaps he can meet all kinds of people here. Liesel asks Gil to accompany him to show him the city, protect him from anything, and act as his hospitable adventurer companion. Gil tells him that he's being very rude for making all these requests, noting that Liesel has been steering the conversation in this direction from the very beginning. Liesel then explains the details to him, saying, "We will travel together for 1 month, and you will teach me how things work. After that, we won't meet unless necessary. I will pay you whatever you want, though I don't know the value of your services." Afterward, they go to the room together, and Gil tells Liesel, "I booked the room next to mine for you." Liesel thanks him, saying, "I didn't have a place to sleep until now. I will tell you the truth now. I came to this completely unknown country by chance, or perhaps by someone's design. I was speaking with my subordinate in my room, and suddenly I found myself standing in an alley in this country. I looked around, and it wasn't much different from my own country, so I felt something was strange, as if the entire world had shifted slightly from its natural state. If you don't believe me, our conversation ends here." Gil tells him to keep talking, adding that if he were lying, it was a terrible lie. He wants him to introduce himself properly. Liesel continues, saying, "I have been active in my position recently, but I am a duke." He identifies himself as a royal advisor who worked at the palace. "My king is wonderful despite his young age. No one ever forced me to abandon my position. I am proud to serve him. If my absence poses a problem, I am confident they will find a way to bring me back, but I doubt I'm capable of doing so alone. That sort of task is the king's specialty. Until then, I will consider this period a vacation and enjoy it." The next day, Liesel wakes up and goes to Gil, telling him that he wants to become an adventurer. Gil informs him that they must go to a clothing store first, as his current appearance attracts too much attention. After that, we find them at the Adventurers Guild. Gil explains to Liesel that adventurers are simply people who perform various tasks for others, and the Adventurers Guild acts as an intermediary for these tasks. They approach a young receptionist, but he tells him that the guild master is not present at the moment and that they should come back another day. He adds that nothing can be registered, explaining, "We sometimes face interference from nations due to our independent status. Therefore, we do not register nobles, knights, or those of similar standing as adventurers here. Please leave now." Gil tells him that Liesel is not a nobleman, he simply wants to register to become an adventurer. The guild employee then agrees and goes to prepare the necessary tools. Liesel and Gil went to the Adventurers Guild for Liesel to join. Stad, the receptionist, began collecting Liesel's information for registration and issued him a guild card. He asked Liesel to prick his finger for the card, and shortly after, Stad informed him that the guild card was ready. Stad then began explaining the ranking system mechanism. He informed Liesel that the guild lends out encyclopedias containing information about monsters and plants he might encounter during his tasks, adding that he could ask if anything was unclear. Liesel asked if these encyclopedias were for sale. Stad explained that viewing them is free, but removing any guild documents is not permitted. However, Stad gave him the location of a store that sells technical books on various subjects, not just monsters and plants. Liesel thanked him and left with Gil. 3 days later, Liesel was reading through the encyclopedias when Gil approached him. Liesel asked about the status of his mission, and Gil replied that it wasn't bad. Holding one of Liesel's books, Gil compared Liesel to a fish swimming in oceans of books devouring knowledge. Liesel informed him that it was time for lunch and that he would go to the guild afterward because he had a new task. Liesel and Gil then went to the guild to complete the orientation and accept a new mission. Then an individual arrived who had wanted to join the Adventurers Guild but was rejected. Having heard that the famous One Blade is partnering with someone, he expressed his resentment that he was rejected for a partnership while a guild accepted a beginner working with him. Liesel told him that there was a formal agreement between him and Gil to work together. The man retorted that Liesel thought he was special just because he bought One Blade with money, insisting that Gil does not work for money. Liesel replied that if he truly believed Gil could be bought with money, he should try buying him with an amount exceeding what Liesel paid. The man replied that he was a B rank, just like the man Liesel bought. Liesel told him that hearing a nobody like him compare himself to something belonging to Liesel was utterly disgusting. The man then initiated a fight with Liesel, but Gil defended him and defeated the man. Stad started to intervene, but Liesel reminded him that guild employees are not allowed to intervene in disputes between adventurers. Stad informed him that he could intervene if requested. Liesel thanked him, noting that Stad was worried about him facing a penalty. He then gave Stad money to repair the damages and stated that he would return another day to take a mission. The scene shifts to Gil in his room, telling himself that in that moment his body moved instinctively as if Liesel had made him his knight. And so ends today's episode. To watch more episodes, please subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button to receive all the latest updates.
The episode begins with Liesel meeting Gil. At a restaurant for breakfast, they notice that the food tastes completely different from what was served in Liesel's previous world, though he finds both to be luxurious. Liesel remarks that he is enjoying this time because he is technically on vacation. Suddenly, a captain enters the restaurant and informs the waitress that they received a report about a man impersonating a noble staying there. The waitress becomes angry at the accusation against her guests, but the captain insists on passing through to verify the situation. Upon seeing Liesel, the captain freezes in his tracks and immediately apologizes, explaining that he had been told there were no nobles in the city. Liesel tells him that he isn't a noble, but rather an ordinary adventurer. However, the captain does not believe him. The scene shifts to Liesel and Gil in a forest, where Liesel thanks Gil for helping him reach the location. Gil asks him to adjust his way of speaking, as adventurers don't talk like that. Liesel then asks Gil to teach him more. Gil looks away and spots a giant rat, informing Liesel that their mission for the day is to eliminate 10 of them. He warns Liesel that they flee quickly, so they must be killed fast. Before Gil can finish speaking, Liesel uses magic to summon a gun and shoots the small monster. Gil is surprised because guns in this world typically use metal bullets and are considered impractical, so no one uses them. Liesel demonstrates how his gun works, firing magical energy instead of bullets, and proceeds to kill several giant rats with it. Afterward, they head to the Adventurers Guild to find another mission. Lizel finds a quest to collect items from a labyrinth, noting that items are found up to the 5th floor and the base reward is 10 silver coins. Gil decides that the 5th floor suits their rank and the pay is good, so they accept the quest. Te go tostad. The register. When asked if any item is acceptable, Stad confirms that he doesn't mind what it is, as long as it comes from within the labyrinth. Lizel asks about a group of people sitting nearby. Stad explains that a new labyrinth was discovered a few days ago, and those adventurers are likely working on it. The labyrinth is difficult, so their research is taking a long time. Gil is surprised by how silently they are working. Stad explains that the issue isn't the monsters, the puzzles within the labyrinth. They are extremely difficult, so the adventurers copy them down and try enthusiastically to solve them. They are chasing the completion prize, a reward for the first to clear the labyrinth, which also boosts their adventurer ranking. Because of this, there is a severe shortage of people doing regular quests, as everyone prioritizes the labyrinths, especially when a new one is discovered. Stad suggests that if they are heading that way, they can look at a nearby table where a copy of the first cipher is displayed. Lizel considers this, but Gil insists they stick to the quest they already accepted. Asteliv, Ginotisil's curiosity about these ciphers to let him take a quick look. Lizel approaches an adventurer and asks to see the puzzle, but the adventurer flips the paper over to hide it. However, Lizel manages to glimpse the content and finds an interesting, well-crafted cipher consisting of numbers in an ancient script with a fascinating sequence. He quickly returns to Gil. As they walk, Lizel ponders the ancient script. He is familiar with it and wonders if this world is his past or future, feeling compelled to solve the mystery. Gil warns him not to meddle in affairs that don't concern him to avoid trouble, but Lizel doesn't listen. They arrive at the labyrinth for their assigned mission and enter to collect items. Finding items isn't guaranteed. It's entirely random and based on luck, so they have no choice but to walk around and search. It is noted that there is a boss on the lower floor, though not a particularly strong one. Suddenly, arrows are fired at Lizel, but Gil saves him at the last moment. Lizel is surprised that the arrow was aimed directly at him. He thanks Gil, but is puzzled by the event. Gil scolds him, telling him to ensure he can handle such traps, noting that Lizel had let his guard down simply because Gil was there. They proceed to the 2nd floor to continue their search and find a chest. Lizel approaches it cautiously, aware that it might contain monsters. The scene then shifts to Lizel and Gil visiting a merchant to appraise the items they retrieved from the labyrinth. Guido asks them, "How may I help you today?" Lizel replies that he is an adventurer and wants to appraise some goods from the labyrinth. He places 2 dolls in front of Guido and asks if they are worth a full gold coin. Guido informs him that some collectors might pay 5 gold coins for them. He explains that there are many people who collect cloth labyrinth dolls. Usually, they sell for 2 gold coins or 5 for a pair. However, classified as labyrinth goods, they are low grade and essentially worthless. Though Guido adds that he is willing to buy them if they wish. Lizel declines the sale, stating, "No, please just appraise them as labyrinth goods." Lizel then asks Guido to box and wrap the dolls since they are made of cloth, adding, "If you have a red ribbon, please use it. I like that." He remarks that he puts effort into worthless things purely for the fun of it. The scene shifts to Gil, asking Lizel about the young team they saw that morning. Gil notes, "I don't know much about them, but they are rank C. It will take them some time to reach rank B." Lizel replies, "Yes, they were discussing the cipher at the guild. I don't need anything from rank B adventurers, but I prefer investing in someone with a bright future." The team then approaches Gil and Lizel to introduce themselves. The first person introduces himself as Aelin, the team leader. He says, "Thanks to your advice this morning, we are currently in the lead in the labyrinth. However, we have a proposal. We are stuck again and need your help." Lizel congratulates them, saying he hopes they will be the first to reach the final chamber. He agrees to help them in exchange for 50% of the completion reward. Aelin gets angry at the price. Lizel asks him, "If I solve the puzzles and you reach the bottom, thanks to me, do you think simply saying thanks, we're done with you, would be enough? I think you are mistaken about something. Do you realize you are not in a position to negotiate? I could just go to the labyrinth myself tomorrow, Flustered, Ain says, let me rephrase. We want the honor of being the first to clear the dungeon. We will pay you 50%, or rather, let us keep 50% of the reward. Please, we must be the first to clear it. We need your help. He rejoices greatly when Lizzle agrees. The next day, Lizzle is seen sleeping and appears to be sick. Ain enters and hands Lizzle a paper with the puzzle, saying, you could have stopped by yesterday on your way back. Ain explains that they put in a huge effort yesterday. The new floor was a massive maze, and they advanced alone until late at night, facing a huge number of monsters. Lizzle looks at the problem and says, 10 doors. Enter the second door from the left, then the fifth, then the eighth. The scene moves to the Adventurers Guild. Lizzle notes, we haven't found any escort missions yet. There are missions designated for rank C, but combat skill alone isn't enough. Stad then approaches them and informs them that the client from the other day requested to meet them. The client liked the goods and wanted to thank Lizzle personally, so they go with Stad. Gil asks Lizzle, did you know they were important and hope for this to happen? Lizzle replies, no, but something seemed strange. Collectors usually seek attention, but these didn't mention their names. Lizzle talks to Gil, remarking, collectors usually seek attention, yet they didn't mention their names. Furthermore, they offered 10 silver coins regardless of what we brought back. Just then, Ray approaches them and says, sorry for keeping you to waiting. He asks, did I enter the wrong room? The guard corrects him, saying, this is the correct room. Please enter quickly. Lizzle greets him, introduces himself, and explains that he is the one who procured the goods. Surprised, Ray remarks, I didn't expect an adventurer like you. Please excuse me. I didn't mean to offend. Lizzle replies, I get that a lot. It's fine. They sit at the table to have tea. Ray tells him, you can call me Ray, and introduces himself as a viscount in charge of the military police administration. He adds, adventurers probably don't like me very much. Now, let's get to the main topic. Lizzle asks, I came here regarding that mission. Did I make a mistake? Ray replies, not at all. Packaging and those goods brought me a joy I haven't felt in a long time. I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart and apologize, as it seems I paid less than necessary for those goods. Lizzle assures him that the payment covered the cost of wrapping and more. Ray counters, rather, it is payment for the joy you gave me. However, that is just an excuse. If you were the one who did that exquisite wrapping, you must know the true value of those dolls. Lizzle responds, I assure you, they were appraised accurately. Ray insists, but that doesn't reflect the whole truth. Lizzle thanks him, and Ray asks if they can become friends. Lizzle replies, it would be an honor, but I am just a beginner, an F-rank adventurer. Ray explains, I felt it would be wise to build a personal relationship. That is what my intuition tells me. Do you trust me? Lizzle replies, if you think so, I won't oppose you. Ray then invites them to visit sometime, saying, I would like to show you my collection. Now, please excuse me. After Ray leaves, Lizzle says to Gil, I think the suspicions about me are gone now. Gil asks, what makes you think that? Lizzle replies, he checked my status, magic, before he left, didn't he? Gil notes, it's unlikely you could have deceived him completely. The scene shifts to Ray talking to himself. He didn't seem annoyed, but there was a hint of caution towards me. I'll start by building a friendship. Later, Lizzle tells Gil, I'm glad Ain's team successfully cleared the labyrinth. Gil replies, and you made a good profit as well. Lizzle asks, was the reward large? Gil answers, a set of high-ranking equipment? They will use it all. It's not enough if they intend to advance further. Lizzle asks, why are you only rank B? You could reach a higher rank, couldn't you? Gil answers, I am a solo adventurer. This is the limit of what is possible. Lizzle asks, what is the real truth? If that were the only reason, I couldn't trust the guild. Gil explains, at rank A and above, special missions come in sometimes. Lizzle responds, you mean missions from nobles and wealthy merchants? Gil says, I have no patience for protocols, and I'm not interested in dealing with people like that. Lizzle then hands him money, thanking him for the past month, noting that he wasn't able to spend everything he had. Gil replies, you made a fortune at the last minute. This is too much. Lizzle says, it's a token of my gratitude. I also want to offer an advance booking if something happens later. Will you help me? Gil grabs Lizzle's hand tightly. Lizzle says, that hurts. Don't force me to issue an order to you. I don't want to bind you. Gil then grabs him by the collar and says, I don't want to hear your opinion on my decisions. He tosses the money and adds, Don't bore me. Lizzle replies, I'll make sure not to disappoint you. And so, today's episode comes to an end. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to receive all the new updates.
An exhausted office worker is accidentally pulled into another world while trying to save a woman, only to find himself trapped in a kingdom that summoned a saint to cure a deadly plague. Instead of asking for a luxurious life, he chooses to work as an accountant in the royal palace, where he draws everyone's attention and rises to become one of the most important nobles in the kingdom. Our story begins with our hero, Seishiro Kondo, an exploited office worker. Looking utterly exhausted, he tells us that no matter how many tasks he completes, the work only continues to pile up. He spends day after day battling invoices, and before he knows it, he is on the verge of turning 30. Indeed, our hero is now fully in his 30s. One evening while heading home, a twist of fate leads him into an alleyway where he hears a student crying for help. When he rushes to assist her, he is shocked to see her being dragged through a portal. Without hesitation, our hero tries to save her, but he ends up getting teleported along with her. When he wakes up, he finds himself surrounded by a crowd. Standing out among them are a black-haired man and an albino man. The latter addresses the girl as the Great Saint. Our hero notes that, due to a prank of destiny, he has been swept up in an otherworld summoning. He adds that according to their explanation, this is the kingdom of Romani. There is a forest covered in miasma called the Demon Forest, and once every 100 years, this substance spews forth, causing disease. However, since only the saint can purify that miasma, they gathered the country's sages and performed a summoning ritual. We now see Seiichi in a meeting. The official in charge apologizes to Seiichi for bringing him to this world. He assures him that the kingdom will take care of him, noting that the chancellor has ordered them to spare no expense in providing everything he needs to live. The official asks our hero if he desires anything. Seiichi, conditioned by years of workplace exploitation, unconsciously replies that he wants a job. That evening, he arrives at his dormitory, a place where many palace officials live. Upon entering his room, he is amazed by how spacious it is. He looks up at the sky and says with resignation that it seems he ends up working no matter where he is. Though this is his own fault, as he literally just asked for more work. But those are just details. We see that he told the official he was good at mathematics and accounting, so they assigned him as a mentor to Helmut Maria, the head of the royal accounting department. Looking at his old business card, he wonders if his knowledge will truly be useful in this world, but regardless, he requested mathematics books so he could adapt over time. Lying on his bed, he wonders how the girl is doing and if they will allow him to see her once things settle down. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door. Our hero opens it to find a blonde man greeting him, introducing himself as Norbert Blanc, sent by Helmut to deliver clothes and books. As he hands over the items, he mentions that he also lives in this dormitory and works in accounting, so he is pleased to meet you. Seiichi introduces himself as well, but his name seems difficult for the blonde man to pronounce, so he decides to call him Sei. Observing his demeanor, Sei can't help but think that apparently there are overly friendly people everywhere in the world. The next day, we see our hero in his new suit in the garden. He mentions that based on what he reviewed yesterday, they use Arabic numerals, and it seems everything he reads is automatically translated. So it was easy, and consequently, he won't face any problems at work. Yes, he is a workaholic beast. Just then, the same black-haired man from before appears. He asks, "What are you doing in this place?" Seiichi replies that he's waiting for Mr. Helmut from their royal accounting department. The black-haired man asks for the reason, and Seiichi replies that starting today, he will begin working in that department. The man asks why would he do that, but just as Seiichi is about to answer, Norbert appears, interrupting everything. Upon seeing him next to Commander Indelark, Norbert panics. Without saying another word, the black-haired man leaves the area, leaving the two of them alone. Norbert tells our hero that he had never seen the commander of the Third Order of Knights that closely. He asks what they were talking about, and Seiichi says he simply asked what he was doing there. Seiichi then asks about what Norbert mentioned earlier. Norbert explains that the Third Order of Knights is an elite unit, capable of using both magic and swords. But Commander Indelark is on a whole other level. After all, he is handsome, extremely strong, and of noble birth, being the son of a marquis. And if that weren't enough, he became a commander at a very young age and is considered an exceptional genius. Seiichi admits he sounds like an impressive person, but putting that aside, they see Helmut arriving, so they get to work. In the royal accounting office, he meets his colleagues. However, Helmut suggests they start by having some tea. When they finish drinking, they notice it's time for lunch, so they do what's necessary. During lunch, the others notice that Seiichi eats very little. In the evening, we see everyone going home as it's quitting time. This leaves our hero confused. Helmet approaches Seiichi to thank him for his work and informs him that tomorrow is a day off, so he suggests he use it to explore the city and buy what he needs, handing him a small bag of money. Hearing this, Norbert offers to take him. That seems like a good idea to Helmet, and well, our hero had no choice but to accept. At the market, Seiichi sees that the kingdom's currency is called rula, and the price varies based on the product's value. Assuming 4 rula equals 100 yen, the amount they gave him is about 75,000 yen. Not bad. Seiichi spots a shop selling an abacus and asks the vendor if he can see it. The vendor is a young man and sees that Seiichi is a palace worker, saying he has nothing worthy of an official. Seiichi crouches and asks if he made the abacus. Upon confirmation, he tells him he would like to order something from him. Then we see him looking at some colored pens. Norbert doesn't understand why he's looking for pens, knowing the palace provides them. Seiichi replies that he wants one for personal use. Looking further down, he reads about a magic pen that doesn't need ink refilling. It doesn't matter if it's super expensive, he takes it anyway, because operational expenses are very important. As they walk, Seiichi thinks he is grateful to Norbert because he was able to see the city and learn the cost of things. So, in the morning, he works even harder, and we see him arriving at work very early, long before everyone else. He greets them and Helmet approaches asking what he's doing. Seiichi tells him he started cleaning because the place was a pigsty, leaving them astonished. In the evening, Norbert asks Seiichi if he slept after yesterday. He replies yes, but Norbert doesn't believe him, seeing the dark circles under his eyes. Seiichi tells Norbert that with age, fatigue doesn't go away completely. Knowing this, Norbert gives him a tonic, asking him to sleep well tonight. Just then, Helmet arrives to tell Seiichi that the Saint is asking for him. On the way to the entrance, he sees Indolark. When he reaches the Saint, an albino man is scolding her for being late. The Saint asks him to calm down because she summoned Seiichi and introduces him as Prince Julius, who is looking after her. Yua Shirinesishi asks Seiichi and Indolark to sit down and asks if they told him about this world. Seiichi answers yes and asks her what she intends to do now. Yua answers firmly that she intends to do her job as a saint.
After all, the people in the country have problems. A guard enters to tell Julius that the king is summoning him for an urgent matter. Julius leaves, putting Indolark in charge. Seiichi responds to the saint's words. He understands she has a sense of justice, but she must understand the situation. She was kidnapped, or rather summoned, advising her to think carefully about what to do and how to act. It doesn't mean he refuses her being a saint, but she must give herself time to understand the situation. Seiichi is unaware of the dangers of being a saint, assuming they just need to remove the miasma. The saint calls him heartless, because if the miasma spreads, many people will die. Seiichi tells her they don't even know if they told her the truth. With that, the saint gets fed up and leaves. Sei leaves too, and sees Indolark watching a knight arriving at night. Sei thinks it's the duty of adults to guide the young, but obviously the saint won't listen to a stranger. Tired of this, he looks at the bottle Norbert gifted him. The next day, Norbert greets him as usual, but is startled to see Sei more enthusiastic than usual. Our hero tells him that thanks to the tonic he gave him yesterday, he woke up feeling lighter and with a clear mind. Norbert tells him this medicine is excellent. It wasn't prepared by a talented apothecary who supplies the knights for nothing. Interested, Sei asks if he can buy some too. Norbert answers yes, as his shop is in the city. He even offers to take him any day. Sei asks him to do it that very day after work. Thus, we see them in the evening buying 10 bottles costing 600 rula. The apothecary thanks our hero for buying so many drinks for the soldiers. Sei was about to mention they were actually for him, but he is interrupted. Commander Indolark and his deputy, Rhoda, arrive at the scene. The blue-haired man asks what they are doing there. Norbert explains he was showing the city to our hero. Rhoda recognizes Sei as the person who tagged along with the saint, despising him for having no powers, and tells him he's just an ordinary person. Sei doesn't reply and says goodbye, but while walking, he crosses paths with Commander Indolark, who warns him that the Chancellor has his eyes on him. The next day, Sei can't stop thinking about that. He assumes it's because he might be an obstacle to him. For now, he decides to put it aside and focus on his work. Upon finishing some papers, he asks Helmet to assign him another task. This surprises all his colleagues because he finished it so quickly. Thus, we see him reviewing other requests with the help of his abacus. Amazed, Norbert asks what is that. Sei explains it's a useful tool for calculation. Still, Norbert suggests he shouldn't overexert himself, but Sei reassures him, saying with the tonics, nothing will happen to him. Ecstatic about being able to work endlessly, he exclaims that this world is wonderful. At that moment, he notices an irregularity. He approaches Helmet to ask if he sees anything strange in this funding request, as all the amounts in the invoices are rounded. Additionally, the third order included a repeated item 3 times as expenses, but all 3 have different values. Helmet justifies this by saying everything falls under training expenses, so the different values don't matter. This baffles our hero. Then Helmet continues, saying the knights are busy, so they don't have time to detail so much paperwork. When he was about to approve the request, Sei stops him, asking why he approves and stamps everything without reviewing. Norbert tells him they have no other choice. After all, they're called intermediaries because they only classify budgets and approve them. Finally, Sei understands they aren't called intermediaries because they embezzle funds, but because they let everything pass. In other words, they're accounting in name only and exist so high-ranking leaders can spend taxes as they please. But Sei realizes that with these expenses and income, the country won't be able to sustain itself. He wonders how they cover this deficit. Determined to discover this, he tells them that for now he will justify and reject all defective documents so they understand once and for all that they won't approve unnecessary expenses. He warns it will take time, but they will definitely resolve it peacefully. Moving to Commander Indalurk, he was wandering the castle. His deputy Rhoda approaches him to complain that lately they haven't been approving any budget for them. Indalurk reminds him that he is the one in charge of that. Rhoda tells him he knows, but he still doesn't understand why the intermediaries are doing that. The Saint appears. She approaches Indalurk to chat. Suddenly another person appears. It is Chancellor Cannell. The Saint greets him familiarly. The Chancellor asks her if she's going to her history classes. She confirms it, but mentions her teacher is scary. She tells him if he were as kind and handsome as him, she'd be much more motivated. Rhoda remains open-mouthed, hearing her say that about the Ice Chancellor, because he sees no speck of kindness in his gaze. The Saint suddenly mentions that most people in this country are very beautiful. Regarding that, Rhoda mentions to her that he met the other day the man who was summoned with her. He asks her if that is how common men look in her world. The Saint answers she can't say exactly, for Mr. Kondo is the typical exploited 30-year-old office worker. Hearing this last part, Indalurk asks her what that means. The Saint tells him they're people who blindly obey the company and work non-stop. She answered this because he looked very exhausted, and this sounded interesting to the Chancellor. Seiichiro feels they're talking about him and discovers that the funds to cover the deficit come from the Demon Forest Defense Office. He tells us that forest releases miasma once every century. Since they had reserves from all those years, they were using them non-stop. He wonders what would happen if the miasma caused damage, like contaminating vegetation and sickening people and animals, causing a shortage in tax collection. But above all, there is a Saint's budget. He must know what it is because the kingdom's coffers might run empty. Then another officer arrives complaining about the rejection of a third order's requests, but another officer also arrives running announcing the confirmation of miasma emission. That night, Seiichiro doesn't sleep, researching everything he needs to know, drinking almost all of the bottles he bought. In the Mage of High Commander's meeting, the Chancellor speaks of a report on the kingdom's expenses and revenue over the last 20 years, comparing real expenses for each department, and an estimate of potential losses due to miasma. Everyone is pale and asks Helmet if he prepared the report, to which he answers no. Meanwhile, Sei argues with the previous officer, explaining that if he wants money, he must take it out of his residence. The officer doesn't care what he says, calling him a mere employee, until the Chancellor arrives, saying in that case, he'll give him a position. Finally, Seiichiro meets the Chancellor, comparing him to a CEO when he approaches him. He feels his hostility. Then he appoints him Deputy Director of Royal Accounting because the information in his report was flawless. Sei thinks this position is too much for him. Moreover, he's fed up with these titles and just wants to work with no strings attached. The Chancellor acknowledges he has experience, calling him talented and saying he expects great things from him. Thus, Seiichiro accepts and his co-workers congratulate him. Sei asks him not to take it too seriously as he's still a newcomer. After that, he finishes his work and sees he drank all his bottles, so he goes out to buy more. He tells himself maybe he worked too much, but when he takes a sip, he feels something strange. Falling to the ground, he realizes he's suffering from hyperventilation, a very serious matter. At that moment, Indalurk arrives, looking at him with great concern. And so ends our episode for today. To watch more episodes, please subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button to receive.
Episode begins with Indalark speaking to a shop owner who tells him that a messenger came today to take a large quantity of tonics. Indalark asks about the officer who ordered them, and the shop owner describes an officer wearing glasses with huge dark circles under his eyes. Returning to the present, Indalark sees the tonic on the floor and confirms that Settei is suffering from an overdose, so he uses his magic to heal him. He asks if he is okay, but Settei says something is burning his chest. Indalark realizes this is magical poisoning, guessing the cause is his origin from another world. Settei grabs his clothes saying he feels hot, so Indo lifts him up, shouting that getting involved with people from another world brings nothing but trouble, though he adds that he doesn't hate him for what he has to do. In a scene change, Settei wakes up with Indo over him explaining that he suffered an overdose. Settei remembers what happened when he drank the bottle, but now he feels nothing. Indo mentions that he treated him with a vital energy spell. Since Settei doesn't remember what happened, Indo tells him it's annoying, mentioning he almost died and that he contained the overdose effects with magic. However, being from another world, Settei lacks resistance to magic, which is why he was poisoned. Indo explains that simply containing the effects won't be enough, and to cure him, he needs his consent. The cure consists of the person getting used to the magical energy of the one who gave it to them. Settei doesn't understand what he means by getting used to it, but he doesn't want to die yet because he has work tomorrow, yes. He is a workaholic, so he asks him to do it. Unexpected largy mouse to mouth. Settei pauses for a moment, but as Indalark said, this treatment won't be sufficient until they go all the way. Settei understood the situation, knowing this was the only thing they had to do. After the night passes, Settei wakes up remembering everything that happened based on how he feels. Everything is fine until he sees the time and says he will be late for work. Indo is annoyed because he was making him breakfast, but Settei bids him farewell, saying he will pay him for the treatment later, leaving Indalark in a state of turmoil. Upon his arrival, he apologizes to everyone for being late. Helmet is happy he arrived, and Norbert boasts about arriving before him. Furthermore, they notice that Settei woke up today with a bright face, imagining he slept very well. Later, we see Settei working, subtly hinting that he had to place a cushion on his chair. However, his mind is clear and he feels better than usual, imagining this is the magic's effect. To avoid being distracted by memories, he shakes his head. He remembers hearing that not everyone can use magic, which is why the Third Order of Knights has such influence in the palace. Despite that, his captain saved his life spending his precious magic just so he wouldn't let him die. Settei had left in a hurry because he was late for work, so he decided he must thank him somehow. Thus, he goes to ask Norbert what they usually do to apologize to a boss for causing trouble. Norbert comments that with a high-ranking noble, in the worst case, you could be imprisoned. He curiously asks what he did, and Settei looks nervous, so Norbert calms him down, saying that since he is from another world, he has the kingdom's protection. This reassures Settei a little, yet he now asks about the value of magic. Norbert says that according to market value. In some cases, it eats several gold coins. Settei remembers that 1 gold coin equals to 0.5 million yen. Knowing this, he considers asking if he can pay in installments. We move now to the Saint and Indo studying magic training. The Saint asks him when he decided to become a knight, but Indalark refuses to answer, claiming they are in the middle of a lesson. Internally, he wonders why those from the other world have so little common sense. The Saint has no idea how to use her magical energy, and although she has a great mission to purify the demon forest, she doesn't seem aware of the danger. Additionally, that man our hero leaves without caring about anything just because he has work, which makes no sense to him. The Saint suggests they have lunch together, but he refuses her, claiming he has other plans, then bids her farewell, leaving her homework to practice controlling her magical energy. Over the next 3 days, we see him approaching the accounting department, asking for Settei. Norbert tells him he always brings his food and eats lunch in the office. Indalark leaves, which worries Norbert. We switch to our hero, working hard to catch up on late work. Suddenly, he sees Indalark arrive, who grabs him by the shoulders and takes him to Kylavas, a blonde person offering a cigarette to our hero. Indo pushes it away forcefully, saying he can't smoke or he'll die. Kylavas calls him dramatic, then asks who our hero is. Settei introduces himself as the deputy director of royal accounting, and the blonde recognizes him as the person summoned by mistake, introducing himself as Siro, Kaileva's Director of Medical Affairs. He asks him how he became friends with Ares Indalark. The captain tells him he almost died yesterday due to an overdose and magical poisoning, as it seems the bodies of those from the other world differ from theirs. Kaileva's considers this strange, as he examined the saint upon her arrival and found nothing unusual. Indalark explains that the saint is a human with magical energy, capable of purification, quite different from this person. Also, he was only involved in the saint's summoning, so he surely didn't get the necessary magical protection. After that, Kaileva's blames him for not investigating better and leaving him alone. Settei understands everything immediately. The kingdom is only pretending to protect him, but if he died alone, it would be better for them. They sit down to figure out his problem. Kaileva's asks our hero about the cause of the overdose, and Indalark tells him to discover it himself since he is the doctor. It occurs to him that perhaps he cannot resist magic particles magicules, explaining it is energy found in the air and abundant in herbs used for potions, causing the overdose. Indalark asks for his opinion, and the captain answers he has no idea. Kaileva's recalls that all foods contain magic particles and asks what he usually eats. Settei lists vegetable soup in the morning, vegetable sandwiches for lunch, and vegetables for dinner. Kaileva's questions if it's possible to live on that. Settei explains he felt heaviness in his stomach when eating meat, but now understands it was due to magic particles. Kaileva's can't believe what he hears and tells Indalark that this man is very strange. Settei continues that he vomits when he feels bad to get relief. Kaileva's stops that and advises him to rest when feeling nauseous. Kaileva's asks permission from Indalark to examine Settei's body with magic. In which are not being asked. Settei seems amazed to see magic for the first time while conscious, likening it to ACT scan, but returns to feeling sick due to the magic, so Indalark acclimates him to his magical energy by holding his hand. Kaileva's confirms his suspicions. Settei has almost no resistance to magic or magic particles, but it's not completely non-existent, and he is building a little resistance by eating low magic foods. Soon he will eat normally, but potions, tonics, and cigarettes are forbidden. This frustrates Settei, as tonics were the only thing that made him happy. They finish, and Indalark takes him to eat instead of returning to work. In the dining hall, everyone watches Indalark choosing Settei's food meat and soup, marking the first time they see the captain taking care of someone. Settei tried to push the poids Settei's l'avant Sud-Ouest est complete. Back at work, Norbert asks Settei if Indalark caused him problems. Settei tells him about the overdose and Indalark's concern for him. Norbert seems fascinated that the captain used his magic on him without punishment. Settei thinks about the necessity of apologizing, but wants to finish his work first. He complains about time wasted on repeated complaints and wishes he had tonics to work without sleep, thinking about a milder dose. Indalark arrives and scolds him for still working even though he almost died. Settei assumes he could drink the tonic if they did that again later, but he has to convince him first. Indo gets tired of waiting, so he grabs him to take him away, but Settei promises to go home after taking some papers. We see them in the evening at Indalark's house eating a nutritious dinner. Indalark orders him to eat, and Settei hesitates to finish more, which annoys Indalark. After eating, Settei apologizes for the inconvenience and his rudeness in the morning. Indalark replies likewise. He asks about his condition, and Settei answers that he is fine. Indo scolds him for not realizing the danger of dying twice and going to work despite that. Settei apologizes and justifies his work by saying it gives meaning to his life. Indo blames him for working until he gets sick, wondering if the accounting department functions poorly. Settei wants to tell him the fault lies with his complaining nights, but he remains silent. Indalark comments that if he wants to prioritize his work, he must take care of himself. Settei promises to do so, but his face provokes Indalark's anger. That concludes our episode for today. To follow more episodes, please subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button to receive all updates.
He spent his childhood in the slums, desperately seeking strength with all his effort just to survive. Now he lives a calm and comfortable life as an adventurer. After saving the life of a miserable young girl, they form a team and become one of the strongest adventurer duos, slaying S-rank monsters. Our story begins with that small boy running through the forest, being chased by a wolf intending to eat him. He attacks the wolf, but it has no effect. The wolf throws him to the ground, and just as it is about to eat him, the boy stabs it with a knife and kills it. He then tells us about his story, that he grew up in the slums, never knew his parents, was always lonely, and hunger gnawed at him daily. He used to risk his life to get bread, wanting to become stronger so no one would mock him. He began to adventure more and more until a day came when he realized he was no longer hungry. Then we see our hero, a true adventurer at the age of 29. This hero is Hajime. While walking through the village, he meets that short grandmother and asks about her condition. She tells him she has become better thanks to the herbs he brought her, thanks him for that, and tells him that everyone is grateful to him for coming to this village because he helps them without charge. He then goes to the dungeon official and tells him he wants to go to the dungeon to get meat. He registers his details and leaves. He enters the dungeon and is surprised because the door is open. He then sees a little girl engulfed in a slime and saves her. She thanks him for saving her life, and he tells her his name. Gets angry with her because she's small and entered the dungeon alone without getting permission from the dungeon supervisor. He asks her what she is doing here and where her parents are. Riru tells him that her parents left her and went far away, and she lives alone. She's not from this village, but hid with a merchant's goods and came to this village, where she knows no one. Hajime realizes that no one in this village will help her, and they will likely kick her out. Hajime then goes and tells her he will get some meat and orders her not to follow him, but Riru does not care about his words and goes after him to help him kill monsters. A huge monster appears before them. Riru is very scared, and just as the monster is about to attack them, Hajime kills it immediately and overcomes it. Hajime then takes it outside the dungeon and cuts it up to drain the blood so the meat becomes delicious. He goes to the girl Olive, who congratulates him on completing his mission. He asks her to handle the assessment. She looks at the cart of meat and tells him it looks delicious, then sees the girl, Riru, and asks him who she is. He tells her she's an orphan girl from outside the village, and he knows the orphanage won't be able to adopt her because they don't have surplus food to offer her. He leaves them and goes to the orphanage. When he arrives, he meets that lady, who tells him his reputation in this village is great, and she knows he's a kind adventurer. She asks him what brought him to this village, and he tells her he wanted to take a walk and came here. She tells him they barely have enough food for the villagers thanks to donations and generous people, and things are not easy at all. He suggests to her that he donates meat to the village monthly in exchange for them accepting a small girl in the orphanage. She tells him that every child in every season needs clothes, a blanket, a mattress, daily supplies, eating utensils, a chair, daily lunch, education, and medical treatment when sick, so meat alone is not enough. She asks him if that girl is his daughter. He tells her she is not, but rather a lonely child from outside the village whose parents abandoned her, and he happens to meet her today in the dungeon. She tells him that his concern for others is a beautiful thing, but this is beyond their capacity. He leaves in despair, telling himself that the old woman is right. The situation is very difficult, as everyone in the village is doing their best to survive, and they won't be able to handle that girl, Riru. Then the Lady Olive comes to him and asks if Riru passed by here, as she has disappeared and she can't find her. She was sitting quietly on a chair, but when Olive went to accept an urgent request and returned, she didn't find her anywhere. He asks her what the urgent request is. Olive tells him that large droppings were found in Martin's field, and it seems there is a magical beast in the back mountains. He then remembers Riru's words when she told him she would live alone, and he realizes her life is in danger. He leaves quickly and goes to the forest, rushing because he wants to find her before sunset. He reaches her and finds her standing in front of a savage wolf, wanting to kill her. When the wolf attacks her, Hajime blocks the attack and saves Riru. He gets angry at her because she's exposing her life to danger. She lost against a weak slime monster in the dungeon, and now she wants to kill that savage wolf? Riru cries and tells him she was starving. Hajime is moved, calms her and tells her to stop crying. Then he adds her to his team and adopts her. He tells her they must prepare the wolf's meat to take it to the village and tell everyone that she was the one who killed it, and she wants to stay in the village in exchange for that. Riru cries intensely, goes to Hajime and hugs him from behind. They go to the village and we see everyone is happy, eating the delicious meat thanks to Hajime and Riru. Hajime speaks to himself, saying, "I won't spoil you, Riru, and I will be stricter since you will accompany me." At night, we see them sleeping happily together. The next morning, Riru wakes him up, and Hajime is surprised because Riru has suddenly become grown up, an adult. Then she returns to her small, natural form again. We see them eating breakfast, and Natalie asks him if Riru is from an ancient race. Then, Hajime tells the girl Riru not to eat too much, as adventurers don't eat much as long as they haven't worked. She tells him she will work a lot today. They go to the Adventurers Guild, and Hajime tells the receptionist Olive that Riru seems to be from an ancient race because she suddenly became grown up and small again. She tells her she will research this matter. She then asks them what they will do today, suggesting gathering wild herbs around the village as it's profitable work and brings joy to the villagers. He tells her that is not important right now. What is important is to train Riru on fighting first. She tells him his logic makes sense and asks her what she thinks about collecting slime monster particles as they use them in alchemy. Riru gets excited and tells them to leave that job to her. She goes with Hajime to the dungeon, and he tells her to focus in front of that monster. Even though it is the weakest monster, she is still a small trainee regarding defeating it. Riru gets excited and goes to kill the slime, but the slime swallows her. Hajime saves her. While Hajime guides her again, she doesn't listen to him and tries to attack the slime, but she defeats her again, so he saves her again. She apologizes to him for her haste. They leave together because it is time for lunch. They go out to the village, and Riru tells him she admires the nature of the village very much. He gives her some bread and tells her it was made by Natalie and is very delicious. She tells him she won't eat today because she didn't complete her mission of killing monsters as he told her, and he should eat all the food. Hajime realizes that she will succeed in killing monsters one day and become a strong adventurer. She is afraid of being abandoned again, so she won't eat as long as she hasn't succeeded in her mission. Hajime doesn't know how to act in this situation. Hajime insists that she eat the food, but Riru refuses. He asks himself, why is he insisting on this, since she's not his daughter or relative? He tells her they will return to the dungeon. She asks him why he didn't eat either. He tells her that one of the rules of companionship in adventure is that it is impossible for him to eat and fill his stomach alone while his companion is hungry. This means she must hurry and try to kill the slime monsters so they can eat together. Riru becomes happy because he cares about her. They go to the dungeon again and observe the slime. He tells her that this slime has its eyes immersed in its body, and its weak point is its eyes. It reveals its eyes when it hears a sound, and at that time she must sneak up and kill it. Then Hajime makes a sound, the slime's eye appears, and Riru attacks and succeeds in killing it. She rejoices greatly. They leave the dungeon eating together and tells him the bread tastes very delicious. Then they return to the guild, and Olive apologizes to him profusely because she didn't finish her research on the ancient races because the village chief invited her to lunch. Riru tells her she succeeded in defeating the slime, and Olive congratulates her on that and tells him that they are very in sync with each other. Then we see Olive at night saying to herself, perhaps that girl Riru turns into an adult's body suddenly at night. A succubus? Is Mr. Hajime okay? And then we see Riru as an adult looking at Hajime while he is sleeping. And so ends our first episode of this anime. I wonder what the story of this girl is and how Hajime will deal with her. We will discover that together in the coming episodes. Goodbye.
Our episode begins with Hajime at the guild, looking completely shocked. The receptionist asks him, "What's wrong? Mr. Hajime, is something up? Why does your face look like that?" He replies, "No, it's nothing, but yesterday I had a really strange dream where a huge mountain wolf kept sniffing me." She tells him, "What a weird dream. That's silly, but let's focus on the matter at hand. Do you remember asking me to research Yu's lineage? I looked into it for you, and I found out what she is. I believe she is a succubus." one of the ancient races. She begins to explain that the world is divided into humans, beastmen, elves, and dwarves. Humans are very intelligent, but physically weak, while beastmen have strong intuition, but low intelligence. Elves are long-lived and peaceful, whereas dwarves are highly skilled, but extremely stubborn. Among these races, occasionally vampires, werewolves, medusas, or sea dwellers are born, possessing the traits of old races. These are what we call the ancient races. Basically, because she feels he didn't understand a thing, she simplifies it. This means she comes from a rare lineage, a unique and anomalous case. Several days later, we see that pig at the slave market, buying a beautiful and captivating maid. She asks him, "How much will you pay?" He asks her how much she wants. She tells him that silver coins won't be enough and he can't afford her price. He gets angry and strikes her hard. She tells him that's it, pointing out that he is just a wandering adventurer and not a local. He gets even angrier and hits her again, but she stands up and delivers a powerful blow that makes his nose bleed. No only that, but senseless, causing quickly. Everyone watches. That girl, named Veronica, is later seen sitting with Hajime. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly what she wants from him or what he wants from her perhaps. He wants to ask her about you. When she extends her hand, Yu transforms into an adult woman, confirming to Hajime that she possesses a rare ability. Hajime says, "Thank you very much, Veronica. How much money do you want for discovering her true nature?" She tells him she doesn't want anything because she didn't do anything, but he insists, calling her a very sly girl and worrying she might demand money later, so he demands to know the price now. Veronica is quite shocked by his words. The scene shifts to Hajime and Yu sleeping when someone knocks on their door. When Yu steps out, she finds Veronica, who tries to recruit her into working in prostitution and immoral acts. Yu refuses, and Hajime gets angry, telling her, "We are well-raised people." The next morning, Hajime and his friends head to the dungeon to gather minerals. They need to collect them quickly before the dungeon regenerates itself. Since they will be venturing deep today, he asks Rui not to wander off and to stay close to them at all times. Rui doesn't answer him, feeling frustrated by his words because she feels useless. So Veronica tries to cheer her up, assuring her that she isn't. They enter the dungeon to collect the minerals, during which Veronica chatters incessantly. Hajime gets very fed up with her because she is serious about recruiting Rui, even though he knows Rui is free to do as she pleases and it's none of his business. Suddenly, while walking, Veronica steps on a stone that turns out to be a teleportation trap. Hajime tries to grab them, but it's too late, and they are transported to a dark place. Hajime frantically presses the same stone to activate the teleportation magic again, but it doesn't trigger a second time. He quickly reminds himself that he cannot afford to panic inside a dungeon. His friend Rishat asks him if there are monsters dwelling in this dungeon. Hajime explains that there are 10 descending floors, and the monsters in the lower levels have not been defeated yet. If the two girls were sent to the depths, there could be opponents strong enough to threaten Veronica. Rishat offers some advice, and Hajime realizes he is right. While the situation is dangerous, his anger actually stems from the fact that adding a child to the team has disrupted his rhythm. He thanks Rishat for his help, and they run through the place quickly to catch up with the girls. The scene shifts to Veronica and Rui wandering in the dark place. Rui asks Veronica to stay behind her since she was the one who dragged them into this dangerous situation, though Rui is a little afraid because she has never descended to this depth before. Suddenly, Veronica feels something behind her. They find nothing. They are frightened as they have never been in this situation before. But Rui tries to show courage. She acts like a true adventurer, telling herself not to fear because fear paralyzes both the body and the mind. Veronica realizes that Hajime has taught her well. Adventurers must suppress their fear and make calm decisions. Rui tells her that adventurers must suppress their fear and make calm decisions. However, the moment Rui sees the monster in front of her, she becomes terrified, and both her body and mind freeze. Veronica then uses her magic, striking the monster with a single blow and killing it. Rui is delighted, while Veronica boasts about her strength, saying, "I'm not just a pretty face, I have power too." Rui claims she can fight as well, but upon seeing another huge monster, she retreats in fear, and they run away together. Veronica warns her that making a commotion will only cause more monsters to appear. Scared but determined, Rui insists she is an adventurer with adventurer's intuition, so she guides Veronica down a specific path. However, when they reach the end, they discover it was the wrong way, finding only a chest. Rui becomes deeply disheartened because her intuition proved worthless, and to make matters worse, the treasure chest is empty. Trembling, she asks Veronica to hide inside the chest while she draws the enemy's attention. Veronica refuses to let her sacrifice herself, telling her that she will hide with her because a true adventurer never throws their life away. They hide together, with Rui dropping her sword on the ground. Inside, Veronica asks Rui, "Why do you want to be an adventurer? You aren't cut out for it. But since you are of my lineage, I think you could earn money much more safely in my line of work." Rui replies that she is still young, so she isn't sure what suits her best yet. Veronica tells Ryuri that she believes she could earn money much more safely in her line of work, noting that beauty is a talent in itself. Ryuri suddenly recalls Hajime saying earlier that his job would be easier and things would run smoother without her. She snaps back to reality in tears, asking herself if she is hindering Hajime because she lacks the talent to be an adventurer. Just then, Hajime rushes in to face the monster, declaring he has no time to deal with it, and successfully finishes it off. He wonders where they are, then spots Ryuri's sword on the ground. He thinks to himself, wondering if that fool got involved in a fight against monsters in the dungeon. He reasons that fighting and death can happen to anyone, even Ryuri, and assumes the worst, accepting it as a part of the adventurer's life that happens all the time. Suddenly, he hears a noise coming from a chest. He approaches it, and when he opens the lid, he sees Ryuri and Veronica climbing out. Veronica tells him he took too long because of his dullness, leaving him shocked. Ryuri cries, telling herself she won't weep over something like this because she is an adventurer. Hajime smiles at her, and she asks him to proceed with collecting minerals. He asks if she is sure she doesn't need a break, and when she insists she is fine, he tells her she needs to keep up then. They finish collecting minerals and head to a restaurant to eat. Hajime asks Ryuri what's wrong and why she isn't eating. She tells him that she possesses no talent as an adventurer and fears she is just holding him back. He tells her to stop talking like that, explaining that her true talent is being loud, like an idiot, and always laughing. He tells her to finish her meal. She remarks that he didn't have to call her an idiot, but he retorts that it's because she isn't smart. She replies that perhaps she really does have a talent for adventure after all, and thanks him for the food. Veronica mutters to herself, a succubus whose talent is being stupidly loud and always smiling, before smiling and telling Hajime that he passed. When Hajime asks what exactly he succeeded in, she replies that if he had tried to do something shameful with one of her kind, she would have cast a curse on him to make his enemy rot and fall off. Shocked by her words, he tells her that would be a declaration of war. And so, today's episode comes to an end. If you liked the video, please hit the like button and do not forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell icon to receive all the latest updates.